Your tribe is native to your land, the first to set foot and build a civilization in your homeland. But through the greed and search for territory of other nations, you're forced out of your home and treated as second-class citizens. Given this long history of mistreatment, will you fight hard to reclaim what's rightfully yours, or will you choose an easier path to a peaceful life? Hello there, welcome to Eventful Insights. Today, we're going to discuss the long-enduring history of the Indian Wars, from the late 1600s to the Wounded Knee Massacre of the 1800s. Join me as we delve into the tragic fate of the native tribes as they try to cement their place in their homelands. But before that, what do you know of the Native American tribes? Let me know in the comment section below. Now let's get started. In 1622, trouble brewed between the Powhatan tribe and English settlers in Jamestown, Virginia. The Powhatan were upset because the settlers were taking their land for tobacco farms, breaking promises and mistreating them. The Powhatan chief, Opechancanough, and his brother, Opitchapam, planned a big attack to show their strength and make the English leave. When the day came, Powhatan warriors attacked Jamestown by surprise. It was chaos as people fought for their lives. The Powhatan wanted to send a clear message. They wouldn't give up their land without a fight. After the attack, 347 people were dead and the colony was in trouble. But the English didn't give up. They fought back, starting the Second Anglo-Powhatan War. The Indian Massacre of 1622 reminds us that greed and power struggles have serious consequences. It's a sad part of history that shows how different groups fought for control of the land. The attack in 1622 was just the start of many battles between Native Americans and European settlers. This tragic event set a precedent for future clashes as both sides vied for control of the land. The violence and animosity unleashed in Jamestown reverberated throughout the continent, igniting a cycle of warfare and displacement that would come to define the centuries-long struggle known as the Indian Wars. One of the earliest battles was the Pequot War. During the Pequot War, English Captain John Mason led a group of Puritans and Mohegan allies to attack a Pequot village in Connecticut. The Puritans were a group of English Protestants who sought to purify the Church of England from within. They believed in strict moral and religious principles and settled in North America to practice their faith freely. Meanwhile, the Mohegan were a Native American tribe, originally from the region that is now Connecticut. They were part of the larger Algonquian-speaking group of tribes and had their own distinct culture, language, and territory. During the colonial period, the Mohegan allied with the English settlers in conflicts against other Native American tribes. The Pequot tribe lived near the Thames River in southeastern Connecticut and clashed with the expanding Massachusetts Bay Puritans. After several English colonists were killed by the Pequot, Governor John Endicott organized a big army to punish them. In response, 200 Pequot warriors attacked a Connecticut settlement, killing some settlers and taking 2 girls. On May 26, 1637, just before dawn, the Puritans and their native allies attacked the Pequot village at Mystic, killing almost everyone there. They then attacked another Pequot village on June 5th, defeating and killing more Pequot people. The war ended on July 28th after a third attack near present-day Fairfield. Most surviving Pequot were sold into slavery, while a few joined other tribes in southern New England. In the aftermath of the Pequot War, the colonies of Plymouth, Massachusetts Bay, Connecticut, and New Haven realized the urgent need to unite against common foes. Thus, on a fateful day in May 1643, they forged a pact, birthing the New England Confederation. Together, they stood as a bulwark against threats looming on all fronts. As years passed, the Confederation faced its greatest trial during King Philip's War. The Wampanoag, Nipmuc, Pocumtuck, and Narragansett tribes rose in defiance, while the Mohegan and Mohawk pledged allegiance to the English. Amidst this tumultuous era, Metacom, son of Wampanoag chief Massasoit, ascended to leadership, renamed Philip by the English. Philip's rise became a highlight of the long history of the Indian Wars. The peace brokered by Massasoit faltered as English encroachment persisted. With his brother Alexander's untimely demise under suspicious circumstances, Philip inherited a legacy tainted by betrayal and broken promises. The spark that ignited the flames of war came in the form of a warning. Christian Indian John Sassamon, alarmed by Philip's intentions, sought to alert Plymouth colony. But his plea fell on deaf ears, and soon Sassamon's lifeless body was discovered, a chilling testament to his prescience. In a swift and brutal reprisal, the English condemned 3 Wampanoag men for Sassamon's murder, their lives forfeit upon the gallows. Philip, accused and incensed, saw in their execution the final betrayal, the breaking point in an already fragile peace. Thus, in June 1675, the die was cast and war engulfed the land. The drums of conflict echoed through the forests as Wampanoag warriors clashed with English settlers, igniting a war that would consume lives and lands alike. And in the crucible of war, the New England Confederation faced its ultimate test, as the fate of a fledgling nation hung in the balance. The Swansea Raid was a series of attacks by the Wampanoag tribe on the Swansea colony in Massachusetts from June 20th to June 23rd, 1675. They killed colonists, destroyed property, and caused chaos. In response, English officials sent troops to destroy the Wampanoag leader Philip's village. The conflict escalated during the summer as the Wampanoag, joined by other tribes, attacked settlements across Plymouth colony. One notable battle was the Bloody Brook Battle in September 1675, where a large group of colonists was ambushed and almost all were killed. Then, in the same century, a significant conflict arose over the trade of beaver pelts, a sought-out luxury item back then. This dispute unfolded between 2 factions of Native American tribes situated in the Great Lakes region, the Iroquois Confederacy and the Algonquian-speaking tribes, who maintained alliances with the French. Comprising 5 tribes unified by the Iroquois language, the Iroquois Confederacy had engaged in beaver pelt trade with British settlers for an extended period. However, as beavers became scarce in their territory along the St. Lawrence River, the Iroquois expanded their hunting grounds into the Ohio country, intersecting with other tribes pursuing the same resources. Consequently, prolonged conflicts ensued, lasting over 6 decades, as each party sought dominance in the lucrative beaver pelt market. Despite achieving territorial control over much of the Ohio country, the Iroquois endured substantial losses, including the destruction of their settlements and agricultural lands by the French. The culmination of these hostilities occurred in 1701 with the signing of the Treaty of la Grande Paix de Montreal, involving the British, French, Iroquois Confederacy, and tribes from the Great Lakes region. While the treaty did not displace the French presence, it cemented an alliance between the Iroquois and the British, proving beneficial in subsequent conflicts, such as the French and Indian War. These conflicts held significant historical importance as they influenced the dynamics of interactions between Native American populations and European settlers. Another significant event was the Great Swamp Fight on December 19, 1675, where the colonial militia attacked a large Narragansett and Wampanoag fortification in Rhode Island. Many Indians, including women and children, were killed, and the Narragansett tribe was forced to join Philip's fight. During the winter of 1676, the conflict continued, with attacks on English colonies throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Maine. The Indians targeted Plymouth Plantation and Providence, Rhode Island, causing widespread destruction and forcing many colonists to flee. In one particularly brutal incident known as the 9 Men's Misery, Narragansett Indians ambushed and killed almost all of a group of colonists, torturing 9 men to death. In the spring of 1676, the English gained the upper hand in King Philip's War. Chief Canon Chet was captured and killed, and a major battle weakened the Narragansett tribe. By summer, King Philip and his allies were on the run. Philip was killed in August, marking the war's end. It was the deadliest war per capita in US history, leaving hundreds of colonists and thousands of Native Americans dead, wounded, or enslaved. King Philip's War, with its unparalleled destruction and profound impact on both colonists and Native Americans, left a lasting imprint on the landscape of colonial New England. However, the end of one conflict merely heralded the beginning of another. Queen Anne's War, which erupted in 1702, would see European powers once again embroiled in a struggle for dominance in the New World. As alliances shifted and tensions flared, the stage was set for a new chapter in the tumultuous history of colonial America. Deerfield, a settlement on the western frontier of Massachusetts, was attacked by a combined force of French soldiers and Native Americans. Around 100 men, women, and children were killed, and the town was destroyed by fire. This attack on Deerfield was the deadliest event of Queen Anne's War, which is often called the second of the French and Indian Wars by American historians. While this frontier conflict was seen as less important by France and England, who were focused on the larger War of the Spanish Succession, it had serious consequences for colonial settlers. They faced not only attacks from French and British forces, but also the dangers of tribal warfare among Native American groups. The signing of the Peace of Utrecht in 1713 brought temporary peace to the frontier. However, 30 years later, the outbreak of the War of Austrian Succession reignited hostilities, marking the beginning of the third of the French and Indian Wars. Queen Anne's War led to the bigger fights known as the French and Indian Wars. The Deerfield Massacre and other clashes showed the tensions between European powers and Native American tribes over land and money. Even though there were peace treaties, like the Peace of Utrecht, the rivalry between France and Britain kept brewing. When the War of Austrian Succession started, it reignited the conflicts, triggering more battles that changed colonial America. But before we get started on the French and Indian War, why do you think other colonies keep getting the upper hand on their wars with the native tribes? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. If you want to learn more about the rich histories of nations, tribes, or colonies, head on to our channel for more videos like this. Going back, the French and Indian War, also called the 7 Years' War, happened from 1756 to 1763 and was a big deal in North America. It was part of a larger fight between Great Britain and France, along with their colonies and Native American friends. The war started because everyone wanted control over the Ohio River Valley, which was important for trade and connected to the Mississippi River. Both the British and French tried to get Native American tribes on their side. The French knew a lot of tribes like the Potawatomi and Huron, while the British looked to the Iroquois Confederacy. At first the French were winning, but in 1757, British Secretary of State William Pitt took over and spent a lot of money on the war effort, which helped turn the tide. The war ended with the British winning the Battle of Quebec and signing the Treaty of Paris in 1763. This gave Britain control of Canada and land east of the Mississippi River. But the war cost a lot of money, and William Pitt had to borrow a ton, which caused financial problems and added to the tensions that eventually led to the American Revolution. During the Revolutionary War, Native Americans played a significant role, with some joining the rebel side while others sided with the British. In Stockbridge, Massachusetts, 17 men from the native community joined the colonial militia, laying siege to Boston in 1775. However, not all native communities agreed on which side to support. The Cherokee Nation, for example, was split, with some supporting the colonists and others siding with Britain. Similarly, the Iroquois Confederacy in New York was divided, with the Oneida and Tuscarora nations supporting the Americans, while the Mohawk and others fought alongside the British. This fractured relationships among native nations that had previously coexisted peacefully for centuries. Britain had an advantage in persuading Native Americans to fight for the crown, as their policies had aimed to protect native lands from encroachment by white settlers. British forts and trading outposts on the frontiers served as bases to launch devastating raids on communities supporting the American cause. In retaliation, General George Washington ordered an expedition led by General John Sullivan in 1779 to destroy native villages and crops, earning him the Iroquois name Town Destroyer. Regardless of their allegiance, Native Americans suffered adverse consequences. They were excluded from peace negotiations and further lost land. Following the war, some Americans sought revenge against tribes that had sided with the British. After the American Revolution, native tribes started fighting more among themselves. As the United States grew, there were fights over land and resources, leading to wars where tribes battled each other to survive against the expanding settlers. Cherokee Chief Dragging Canoe led groups of Native Americans in the South from 1776 to 1794, opposing white settlers. During the Battle of the Bluffs, he commanded 400 warriors in an attempt to destroy Fort Nashboro in Tennessee. However, they were forced to retreat during the battle due to an unexpected attack by a pack of unleashed hunting dogs. The Battle of Tippecanoe happened in 1811 in Indiana. It began after a treaty in 1809 made Native American tribes sell a lot of land to the United States. Shawnee Chief Tecumseh didn't like this, so he gathered tribes to resist the settlers. Governor William Henry Harrison led soldiers to destroy Prophetstown, the center of Tecumseh's alliance, built by his brother Tenskwatawa, known as the Prophet. When Harrison's men arrived, there was supposed to be a talk between him and Tecumseh, but the Prophet instigated a fight instead. The next morning, Native American warriors surrounded Harrison's men and attacked. Both sides suffered casualties, but Harrison's troops eventually won. After the battle, the Native Americans lost faith in the Prophet's leadership and left Prophetstown. Harrison burned it down, and Tecumseh's plan for a united Native American confederacy fell apart. Tecumseh then joined forces with Britain during the War of 1812, helping them fight against the United States. Moving from the tribal wars of the 19th century, tensions escalated further with the War of 1812. This conflict marked a pivotal moment as Native American tribes allied themselves with either the United States or Great Britain, seeking to protect their interests and territories amidst the growing hostilities between the two nations. The War of 1812, spanning from 1812 to 1815, was a military conflict involving the United States, Great Britain, and their allies. It arose primarily from disputes like the impressment of American sailors, trade restrictions on American ships, and British support for Native American attacks on American settlers. I won't be delving too much into this conflict because we have a whole other video that fleshes out every important event that happened during the War of 1812. Go to our channel and watch it now to get more details about this war. Following the War of 1812, tensions between Native American tribes in the United States continued to escalate, leading to a series of conflicts known as the Seminole Wars. The Seminole Wars were three conflicts between the United States and the Seminole Indians of Florida before the Civil War. These wars ended with the Seminoles losing their land to white settlers. The First War, from 1817 to 1818, started because the U.S. wanted to capture runaway black slaves living with the Seminoles. General Andrew Jackson led U.S. troops to attack Seminole villages, burn their towns, and take over Spanish-held areas like Pensacola and St. Mark's. This led Spain to give up Florida to the U.S. in 1819. The Second Seminole War happened from 1835 to 1842 because most Seminoles didn't want to leave the reservation they were told to move from, which was set up north of Lake Okeechobee. The U.S. government wanted this land for settlers and tried to force the Seminoles to move under the Indian Removal Act. Led by their leader Osceola, The Seminoles fought fiercely to protect their homeland, hiding their families in the Everglades and using surprise attacks. This fighting was long and costly for the U.S., with thousands of soldiers killed and millions of dollars spent. When Osceola was captured, the Seminole resistance weakened and most agreed to leave. The Third Seminole War happened from 1855 to 1858, when the U.S. tried again to find and remove any remaining Seminoles in Florida. This war didn't involve much fighting, and it ended with the U.S. paying the Seminoles who refused to leave to move out west. Following the Seminole Wars, the relentless clash between Native American tribes and the United States unfolded into yet another chapter of tragedy and violence, foreshadowing the harrowing events of the Sand Creek Massacre. The Sand Creek Massacre happened in 1864, when around 750 Cheyenne and Arapaho, led by Chief Black Kettle, were forced to leave their camp near Fort Lyon in Colorado. They moved to Sand Creek, where Colorado soldiers attacked them, killing 148 men, women, and children. Red Cloud's War started in 1866, when the U.S. government made the Bozeman Trail through Indian land for miners and settlers heading to Montana for gold. For 2 years, an Indian group led by Lakota Chief Red Cloud fought back against workers, settlers, and soldiers to protect their land. Eventually, the U.S. Army left, and in 1868 they signed the Treaty of Fort Laramie. This treaty gave the Black Hills in South Dakota and Wyoming to the Great Sioux Reservation. But when gold was found in the Black Hills, the U.S. started putting army posts there, angering Sioux and Cheyenne warriors led by Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, who were determined to defend their land. Emerging from the tragic events of the Sand Creek Massacre, the Battle of the Little Bighorn continues the conflict between the Native American tribes and the U.S. government. At the Battle of the Little Bighorn in 1876, General George Armstrong Custer and his 600 men faced overwhelming odds against approximately 3,000 Sioux and Cheyenne warriors led by Crazy Horse. Custer and his troops were all killed in what became known as Custer's Last Stand. Despite this victory for the Native Americans, the U.S. government forced the Sioux to sell the Black Hills and leave their land. During the Red River War, from 1874 to 1875, the U.S. Army engaged in skirmishes with Southern Plains Indians, who had left their reservations to reclaim their former hunting grounds in the Texas Panhandle. The conflict ended after the U.S. Army pressured the Indians to return to their reservations. Motivated by a desire for revenge for the killing of his family and to defend Apache lands in northern Mexico and the southwest U.S., Geronimo led brutal attacks against Mexican troops, white settlers, and the U.S. Army from 1850 until his capture in 1886. Wrapping up our exploration of the Indian Wars battles, we now turn our attention to the Wounded Knee Massacre. In the late 1800s, a group of Native Americans called the Ghost Dancers believed in a special dance that could connect them with their deceased loved ones and bring peace and prosperity. On December 29, 1890, the U.S. Army surrounded a gathering of ghost dancers at Wounded Knee Creek in South Dakota. A violent clash ensued, resulting in the tragic Wounded Knee Massacre, where around 150 Native Americans were killed. This marked the final major conflict between the U.S. government and the Plains Indians. As the 20th century began, the American Indian Wars came to an end, but the toll was immense. Despite Native Americans aiding colonial settlers and Americans in gaining independence, the wars resulted in the loss of tens of thousands of lives to war, disease, and famine. Additionally, the traditional Native American way of life was nearly destroyed, and vast amounts of their land and resources were taken. There's a long history of oppression that continues to haunt Native tribes. Recently, the movie Killers of the Flower Moon brought to light the tragic events that occurred in the Osage murders. The movie is based on true events about serial murders in the Osage Nation during the 1920s. It portrays how a group of white individuals terrorized the Osage community in Oklahoma to gain control of their valuable property and mineral rights. The Osage murders, which began in 1921, marked the first major criminal investigation by what would later become the FBI. The Osage Nation, relocated due to white settlement, purchased reservation land in northern Oklahoma in 1865, which later became known for its lucrative oil deposits. As the oil boom enriched Osage tribal members, a system of guardianship left them vulnerable to exploitation. The murders targeted wealthy Osage individuals, including members of the Kyle family, for their valuable head rights, leading to a reign of terror in the community. The investigation revealed a widespread conspiracy involving prominent figures like William Hale, Ernest Burkhart, and John Ramsey, who were linked to multiple killings. Despite convictions, the perpetrators were eventually paroled, leaving a stain on justice. In response, Congress enacted legislation to protect Osage inheritance rights. The ongoing struggle of native tribes against colonial powers has been a recurring theme throughout history. From the earliest encounters with European settlers to the battles fought during the American Revolution and beyond, indigenous peoples have faced continual challenges to their sovereignty, land rights, and way of life. Despite their resilience and efforts to resist encroachment, many tribes endured displacement, violence, and loss. That is all for today's video. Which battle was the most memorable for you? Comment it down below. If you liked this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for updates. Thanks for watching.